It looks like Washington has finally had enough of Pakistan's double game. A new US report has put it bluntly: make your defense budget public or risk losing American aid. For decades, Pakistan's powerful military has operated in secrecy, soaking up billions of dollars while civilian oversight remains weak. The 2025 Fiscal Transparency Report of the United States of America names and shames Islamabad, saying the hidden accounts and opaque spending can no longer be ignored. In Congress, voices are growing louder to strip Pakistan of its major non-NATO ally status unless it opens its books. After years of terror links, bin Laden in Abbottabad, and vanishing US funds, patience in Washington is thin. Despite Trump support to Islamabad, will Pakistan change course or cling to its old double agent image? Hello and welcome. You're watching Statecraft with me, Geeta Mohan. The distrust is not theoretical, it's carved into history. Osama bin Laden was found living a stone's throw away from Pakistan's premier military academy. Hillary Clinton, the then US Secretary of State, testified how US tips about terror camps mysteriously emptied those camps overnight. Aid worth billions, military, economic, and coalition support funds has been frozen since Trump's first term. Now Congress is again moving to yank the privileged partner badge unless Pakistan proves it's fighting, not sheltering, terrorists. Against this backdrop, the new demand for budget transparency looks less like micromanagement and more like self-defense. Can Washington still afford to take Islamabad's promises at face value? The Fiscal Transparency Report 2025 is crystal clear. Pakistan's defense and intelligence spending is still off limits to real scrutiny. The executive budget proposal wasn't even published on time, leaving citizens and investors flying blind. Only limited debt information, including liabilities of state-owned enterprises, is released. Yet, Islamabad expects donors to bankroll its stability. The State Department's message: if Pakistan wants loans, grants, or even political goodwill, it must subject its most secretive budgets to parliamentary and civilian oversight. This isn't just about good governance, it's about rebuilding international confidence at a moment when Pakistan's rupees 7.57 trillion national budget with rupees 2.55 trillion earmarked for defense is ballooning under debt pressure. The report does note that enacted and end-of-year budgets are online and independently audited. Yes, Pakistan's supreme audit body meets global independent standards and posts its findings in a reasonable time frame. But these positives are overshadowed by the yawning gaps in defense transparency. When the military gets a 20% budget hike while debt servicing devours rupees 9.7 trillion, the stakes are too high for blind trust. For Washington, partial openness is not progress, it's camouflage. Without line-item scrutiny of the army and intelligence agencies, corruption and double-dealing can thrive unchecked, and US taxpayers know it. Hillary Clinton's words still sting in Washington.
We will be looking to the Pakistanis to take the lead because the terrorists operating outside of Pakistan pose a threat to Pakistanis as well as to Afghans and others. And we will have ideas to share with the Pakistanis. We will certainly listen carefully to the ideas that they have. But our message is very clear. We're going to be fighting, we're going to be talking, and we're going to be building. And they can either be helping or hindering. But we are not going to stop our efforts to create a strong foundation for an Afghanistan that is free from interference, violence, conflict, and has a chance to chart its own future. This is a time for clarity. It is a time for people to declare themselves as to how we intend to work together to reach goals that we happen to believe are in the mutual interests of Afghanistan, Pakistan, and the region. We have to deal with the safe havens on both sides of the border. It is not enough to point fingers across the border. We must work together to end the safe havens. We must send a clear, unequivocal message to the government and the people of Pakistan that they must be part of the solution. And that means ridding their own country of terrorists who kill their own people and who cross the border to kill in Afghanistan.
Each time the US shared intelligence about a terrorist target, militants vanished as if forewarned. That pattern cemented a view inside the Beltway. Islamabad's security apparatus is not just opaque, it's porous. Whether it was internal sympathies, rogue elements, or deliberate policy, the effect was the same: American lives and objectives undermined. Combine that with the bin Laden raid and you have the textbook case of why transparency in Pakistan's security sector isn't a nicety, it's a necessity. For decades, Pakistan has cracked down on groups that threaten its own security while turning a blind eye or offering quiet sanctuary to those targeting Afghanistan or India. US frustration boiled over after the 2008 Mumbai terror attacks and persistent support for the Afghan Taliban. Despite billions in US military aid, outcomes never matched promises. This selective counterterrorism reinforces the conviction that Pakistan's establishment prioritizes ideological or national interests over American strategic goals. In that environment, giving a blank check to Rawalpindi's defense budget looks like willful amnesia. Behind the walls of secrecy lies a military business empire known as Milbus. Foundations like 4G Foundation, Army Welfare Trust, and Shaheen Foundation dominate banking, cement, fertilizers, and logistics. By 2016, some 50 military-run commercial entities blanketed the economy, creating a golden escalator for retiring officers. 4G Foundation alone has vast industrial holdings with 85 to 90% of senior posts filled by ex-generals. This system guarantees wealth long after service ends, while ordinary Pakistanis face debt and deprivation. For US policymakers, every dollar of aid poured into this ecosystem risks subsidizing not security, but self-enrichment. The Pandora Papers pulled back the curtain. Major General Nusrat Naeem formed Afghan Oil and Gas Limited in a tax haven after retirement. Lieutenant General Shafat-Ullah Shah's wife held a $1.2 million London apartment through a shell firm. Former Air Chief Marshal Abbas Khattak's children ran an offshore company to invest abroad. Lieutenant General Asim Salim Bajwa, the military's one-time media czar, was linked to dozens of Papa John's franchises worth tens of millions in the US, earning him the nickname General Papa John. General Qamar Javed Bajwa's family assets soared from 0 to 2.2 billion rupees in 6 years. This is the backdrop against which Washington is asked to keep funding Pakistan's defense machine. Yes, the army occasionally stages anti-corruption theatrics. In April 2016, General Raheel Sharif dismissed 6 senior officers, including a lieutenant general and major general, for corruption. In August 2024, 3 retired officers were arrested in a probe against ex-ISI head Faiz Hamid over illegal land grabs. But these moves are rare, secretive, and often face-saving. Court-martials seldom produce public convictions. Border post commanders are accused of shielding smugglers. Without civilian oversight, the military essentially polices itself, and self-policing rarely ends in real accountability. For US officials, this is yet another red flag. Congress has noticed. In January 2025, Representative Andy Biggs reintroduced a bill to strip Pakistan of its major non-NATO ally status unless the president certifies that Islamabad is cracking down on the Haqqani network and collaborating with Afghanistan to restrict militant movement, That is not to be now because the Haqqanis are in power in Afghanistan. The bill sits in US House Foreign Affairs Committee, echoing similar efforts since 2019. Revoking MNNA status might not change everything overnight, but it signals Washington's patience is wearing thin. Without proof of counter-terror action and transparency, Pakistan risks losing privileged military cooperation for good. Since 2017, US administrations have repeatedly suspended or frozen security and development aid to Pakistan for inadequate action against terror groups. Under Trump, both foreign military financing and coalition support funds were locked down. Billions that once greased Pakistan's military operations stayed in Washington. Only humanitarian or civilian program aid trickled through. In 2025, new legislation ties any restoration of funds to verifiable action against the Haqqani network and other militants. Defense aid, once easily accessed via MNNA status, remains frozen, and the proposed bill would hardwire these restrictions into law. Given this rap sheet, why doesn't the US just walk away? Geography. Pakistan borders Afghanistan, giving Washington the nearest land access to intelligence and over-the-horizon counter-terror operations. After withdrawing from Afghanistan, the US lost its anchor at Bagram Air Base, the biggest installation of the 20-year war on terror. Trump openly calls regaining Bagram a strategic necessity to watch China.
Except that he didn't respect the leadership of the United States. They just went through the Afghanistan total disaster for no reason whatsoever. We're going to leave Afghanistan, but we're going to leave it with strength and dignity. And we're going to keep Bagram, the big air base, one of the biggest air bases in the world. We gave it to them for nothing. We're trying to get it back, by the way. Okay, that could be a little breaking news. We're trying to get it back because they need things from us. We want that base back. But one of the reasons we want the base is, as you know, it's an hour away from where China makes its nuclear weapons. So a lot of things are happening.
Yet, the Taliban controls the base and rejects any deal. Without Pakistan's cooperation, American planners have no easy doorway back into Afghanistan's airspace. Pakistan also shares a long border with Iran, making it a potential listening post for the US. Also to act against Tehran's nuclear program in case there is a movement there, or to seek regional influence. Its Arabian Sea coastline sits near the Strait of Hormuz, the world's oil choke point. Ports like Gwadar, centerpiece of China's Belt and Road Initiative, are not just Chinese projects. They're chess squares in a game the US cannot ignore. For all the mistrust, Pakistan remains the only regional player offering both proximity and leverage over two of Washington's thorniest adversaries, Iran and China. US strategists also view Pakistan through the lens of great power competition. As Beijing pours billions into the China-Pakistan economic corridor and Gwadar port, Washington needs some foothold to balance Chinese influence. Add Pakistan's own nuclear arsenal and the stakes skyrocket. Ensuring those weapons stay secure and don't inflame South Asia's flashpoints is a US priority. None of that can be achieved without at least a working relationship. Hence the paradox. America can't trust Pakistan but can't ignore it either. This is Pakistan's learned art, the trade of always appearing on Washington's right side while hedging bets elsewhere. It facilitated the US opening to China in the 1970s, then hosted the Taliban leaders decades later. It takes aid with one hand while its generals build fortunes with the other. For Pakistan's elite, aligning with America is less about values and more about rent-seeking from geostrategic relevance. For US taxpayers, the bill for this partnership has run into tens of billions with mixed returns at best. Inside Pakistan, this military capitalism distorts markets, crowds out private enterprise, and undermines democracy. Army elites profit while ordinary citizens face inflation, unemployment, and shrinking public services. International watchdogs warn that unchecked military wealth deepens instability. For US policymakers, funding such a system isn't just wasteful, it's counterproductive, fueling the very fragility they're trying to contain. That's why fiscal transparency isn't a technicality, it's national security. From bin Laden's compound to empty terror camps to offshore accounts, the pattern is consistent. Opacity plus duplicity equals risk. US aid has too often been a subsidy for behaviors antithetical to American interests. Every frozen dollar, every bill to revoke MNNA status, every new condition on aid is Washington's attempt to break that cycle. Yet, geography, nukes, and China ensure Pakistan stays on the US radar. The question isn't whether America needs Pakistan, it's whether it can shape Pakistan's behavior without being played again. US President Donald Trump has amplified this transactional approach. He frames regaining Bagram as a strategic must and Pakistan's transparency as a precondition. No more blank checks. His administration's posture, aid frozen, MNNA status under fire, fiscal transparency front-paged, signals a pivot from indulgence to inspection. Pakistan can still be a partner, but only on audited terms. In a world where US taxpayers are wary of endless foreign entanglements, this message sells at home. That's the open question hanging over this fraught relationship. The US needs Pakistan's geography but fears its duplicity. Pakistan needs US money but resents US oversight. Decades of selective counterterrorism, intelligence leaks, and military enrichment have eroded goodwill. Yet, the potential for a new chapter exists because Trump wants it. Although it has to be anchored in transparency, real counter-terror action, and shared interests rather than transactional theatrics. But that requires Islamabad to open its books and Washington to enforce its conditions. Otherwise, the ally label remains a misnomer. US calls for oversight of Pakistan's defense budgets are not bureaucratic nitpicking. They are the logical response to a partner who leaks intelligence, harbors terrorists, and enriches generals behind a wall of secrecy. Congress is ready to revoke privileged status. Aid and defense funds are already frozen. Yet, Pakistan's location between Afghanistan, Iran, China, and the Arabian Sea keeps it indispensable. Add to that Trump's own interests now in Balochistan. Until Islamabad embraces full transparency and verifiable counterterrorism, Washington will keep one hand on the check and the other on the off switch. Can the world's most powerful democracy ever truly trust its most complicated ally? Thank you for watching Statecraft.